Valve just dropped a new SteamOS on the preview channel, SteamOS 3.8.0, and it looks like a normal update, but it's not, because the biggest thing here isn't performance or stability, is that Valve just added initial support for the upcoming Steam Machine hardware. And that changes the conversation quite a bit, so let's go through it. Now, quick disclaimer before you start updating, this is actually on the preview branch, so not even the beta one, so realistically I wouldn't recommend installing this unless you specifically want to test something. There are still a lot of bugs, things will change, and we're definitely not close to a final version, but as an early look at where SteamOS is going, this is actually a really solid start. So let's start with the main thing. SteamOS 3.8.0 includes initial support for the upcoming Steam Machine hardware, and that's a pretty big deal, because up until now SteamOS has basically been built around the Steam Deck. Now it's clearly being prepared for something bigger, and this likely means that Valve is probably getting ready to release SteamOS on desktop devices as well, so you can just install it on any piece of hardware you own. You can already see hints of that direction in this update. There's early support for things like hibernation, which makes a lot of sense if you're thinking about a console-style PC. That behaves more like the deck, sleep, resume, quick access, that kind of experience. And something else stood out here. There is improved support for USB devices that don't behave normally, including something like a racing wheel. So some of these devices initially show up as storage drives with installers in SteamOS, and you have to switch them into their actual operating mode. That's very typical PC hardware behavior, and the fact that SteamOS is now handling that better, it really makes it feel like the Steam Machine will be a very solid option for something like a sim racing setup or other PC type stuff. Now, beyond the big picture stuff, there are a few fixes here that are genuinely important in day-to-day use. One of the biggest ones is the fix for per-app performance settings. Previously, you could set up a game with specific limits, for example, TDP, GPU clocks, FPS caps, and sometimes those settings just wouldn't apply when you launch the game. It was inconsistent and honestly pretty frustrating if you rely on those profiles. That has now been fixed with this update. So when you launch a game, your settings should actually apply properly every time. It sounds small, but in practice it makes the whole system feel more reliable. Another nice fix is the FSR badge in the performance overlay. Before, you could have FSR enabled and working, but the overlay would still show it as disabled, so you were never completely sure if it was actually doing anything. Now it reflects the real state correctly. And if you're testing performance or tweaking settings, I think that clearly helps a lot. There's also a fix for crashes when closing certain games like Starfield or Jedi Survival or the latest examples, but realistically this wasn't limited to just those titles. I've been testing a lot of games and they all had similar behavior where closing them could cause a session crash and it just sits on a black screen until you force close it with Steam B. So seeing that addressed here is a pretty big stability improvement. Now this next part is one of the most important technical changes in the update, even if it doesn't sound flashy at first. Desktop mode is now using Wayland by default. Up until now, SteamOS has been split internally. Game mode uses Wayland, which is the newer display system, but desktop mode was still using X11, which is much older. To explain this simply, this is the layer that controls how applications talk to your display. It handles things like rendering, input, window behavior, basically everything you see on the screen. And Wayland is a more modern version of that system. It's generally more efficient, more secure, it's lighter, and it runs better. So what does that actually mean for you? In practice, desktop mode should now behave much closer to game mode in terms of performance. Previously, you could run a game in desktop mode and get slightly worse performance compared to game mode. Now that gap should be much smaller or potentially gone entirely. And overall, the desktop experience itself should feel smoother and more consistent. Now another thing, Bluetooth wake has been re-enabled again for the LCD model. If you've been following this, it's kind of been on, then off, then on, then off, then on again. So yeah, it's clearly something Valve is still trying to get right, but at least they are trying. There are also fixes for those random wake-up issues, which should make things a bit more predictable, and it should eliminate the fear of your Steam Deck getting toasted in the case. On the audio side, there are a few improvements as well. Bluetooth headset microphones are now supported, which is useful if you're using Discord or chat voice. There is a trade-off, of course, with Bluetooth. Audio quality will drop while using the mic in Bluetooth, but that's just a limitation of the Bluetooth signal in general. And there are also fixes for audio issues after sleep and better HDMI audio handling. Nothing huge individually, but all good quality of life improvements, specifically the HDMI one. it will be good when you connect the Steam machine to a TV and it works the way it's supposed to from the get-go, instead of you having to troubleshoot audio via HDMI. So yeah, that's big. Now let's talk about the non-deck side of this update. This is where a lot of changes happened, but I'm not going to go through every single device. There's a lot of changes for a lot of different devices, new controller support for a lot of different devices. The important thing here is the direction. SteamOS is now adding proper support for a wide range of handheld PC and hardware, and that includes things like the Asus ROG Ally, Lenovo Legion Go, and even Legion Go 2, the GPD devices, and a lot others. There are improvements across the board, specifically better compatibility, better memory handling, better controller support, and better boot behavior. And yes, the big input latency improvement is here as well. If you've had to deal with SteamOS on one of these other devices, there was an issue previously with controller input latency. This has now been brought down a lot, and controls on these devices should feel much better when using SteamOS. So again, the takeaway here isn't any one feature, is that SteamOS is clearly being built as a platform for multiple devices, not just handheld, not just the deck, but for pretty much everything. Now, separate to all of this, there's also a Steam Deck client beta update, a couple of small but nice changes here. You can now switch to desktop mode directly from the login screen, which just makes the process quicker. And Steam Chat has also been moved into the quick access menu, so it's easier to use in-game. And there's a new quick chat feature. You can hold the view button, move the stick, and send preset messages. It's simple, but it really fits well with the handheld use. So overall, SteamOS 3.0 isn't really about immediate upgrades for the Steam Deck, it's more about what's coming next, and I think it signals that Valve is getting ready to release the Steam machine. I think the biggest takeaway here is clearly the move towards Steam machines, expanding SteamOS beyond a single device, and at the same time, we're getting some important fixes, especially around performance, settings, stability, and desktop mode. It's still early, it's still preview. Again, I advise you not to install it on your Steam Deck, but it's definitely one to keep eye on. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like. Let me know in the comments below what do you think about this direction. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.